All right, so thank you, ambassadors. All right, I would like our board of directors to please stand up. So our board of directors, first of all, our president is Rusbeh Farahanapour. So thank you, Rusbeh, very much. He did not want to be elected for a second term, but he was forced into a second term, and that is the truth. But we also have Norm Bernier, Simon Egtad, Philip Gabriel, Chris Gray, Yasuko Kubo's not here, right? She's in San Francisco. Steve Little, William Manos, myself, and Elham are our board of directors. They are tasked with making sure that the governance of the chamber runs smoothly. There's a lot of things that have to be done to make sure a chamber operates the way it's supposed to operate, and to make sure that we have the influence both with our elected and appointed officials as well as the community and the membership. So thank you guys for all your tireless work. We really appreciate everything you do. And if you are interested in being on the board of directors and you like playing a role in that type of thing, please talk to Rusbeh or Steve Little. They'd be more than happy to give you more information about that. Now we also have a representative from Councilmember Mike Bonan's office, Len. Are you over there? Stand up. Thank you, Len, for coming. Appreciate it. We also have Captain Daryl Ito from the LAPD. Thank you so much for coming. I know that Captain Ito really likes the breakfast that they have here. It's better than what they have at the station, so thank you. And with that being said, it's now time for me to introduce our guest speaker for today, and that is Assemblymember Richard Bloom. So we're so excited to have you. Richard Bloom, the last time he was here, I believe he was running for election. If I'm not mistaken, it was 2 or 3 years ago. And first elected to the 50th District of California State Assembly in 2012. He represents the communities of Agoura Hills, Bel Air, Beverly Hills, Brentwood, Hollywood, Malibu, Pacific Palisades, Santa Monica, Topanga, West Hollywood, and West Los Angeles. So really kind of a low-rent district of the LA area. So we appreciate your sacrifice for us.
I represent the 1%.
Yes, that's exactly right. So prior to being elected to the State Assembly, Assemblymember Bloom served on the Santa Monica City Council for 13 years, and he was also mayor 3 times and mayor pro tempore twice. He served as the chair of the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission, thank you for that, by the way, and chaired the West Side Cities Council, and as a special California State Senate appointment to the California Coastal Commission. So we appreciate you keeping our coasts clean. So there's a lot of things that Assemblymember Bloom takes care of. For example, he's the chair of the Assembly Budget Subcommittee on Resources and Transportation. He's also on the committees for Appropriations, Budget, Business and Professions, Higher Education, and Transportation. So we can tell that you're not particularly busy and you need some more jobs to do. And he's also served on the Legislative Budget Conference Committee in 2014, which was a small group of legislators tasked with negotiating the 2014 and 15 state budget agreement with the governor, which is always, I'm sure, such an enjoyable task, negotiating with the governor for the budget. So he lives in Santa Monica, and he's been married for over 35 years now, so congratulations on that. I just celebrated my 24th anniversary, so that's pretty impressive right there. But anyway, we're very excited to have you. Please come on up and let's hear a round of applause for Assemblymember Richard Bloom. And there's just a little timer for your reference.
Thank you. Thank you, Buzz. And thank you all for having me here today. It's really a pleasure to be back. I think it was 2 years ago, and we do, unfortunately, have to run for office every 2 years in the state assembly. I say unfortunately because it puts you on a cycle where you're essentially constantly running for office, and I think nobody likes that. The public doesn't like it. We don't like it. Senators have 4-year terms in California as opposed to 6-year terms in the U.S. Senate. That was the length of term that I got used to when I was on the Santa Monica City Council. We would be elected every 4 years, and I think that's a relatively comfortable span for the public too. But be that as it may, I don't think that law is going to change anytime soon. So we are in this constant fundraising cycle and running for office cycle. It's really weird because if everything goes well in November and the voters approve, I'll be reelected for a third time to the State Assembly. And a few months later, it'll be June, I'll be 18 months away from another election.
Right.
But if you think about the timeline for that, I need to be prepared for a primary that will take place in June, about 12 months after that. So you see how the timelines really start to become truncated, and you're in a constant cycle of running for office. Well, thank you so much for the very kind introduction, and it is really nice to be here and to see so many familiar faces, to hear from Gary and Bruce Rankin, one of the great organizations. I think, Bruce, you and I have been doing what we do for a long, long time now.
Quarter of a century.
Yeah, it's, I've been, before I was on the city council, I was involved in my local neighborhood group, and I think that's when I first got to know you, Bruce, and your organization has continued to do well and prosper. And I was at SOVA only yesterday on PICO, the West Side, Bruce's organization provides SOVA with much of the food and produce that it distributes to families in need. A very important job that you're doing. Thank you for that. And thank you to Rusbe and the organization for again for having me here today and allowing me to come in. I thought what I'd start with is some good news about programs that have been in effect already for a period of time. I was the principal co-author of the revised California film tax credit law that was implemented in 2014. And as you all probably know, that industry is critical to the success of Southern California, but state after state started to poach our business and entice companies with their own film tax credit program in going to New York, to Georgia, to England, to Canada. Our film industry was becoming decimated. And that's because we had done nothing to improve our own program to compete with what was unfortunately going on in other states. In some minds, and I think there's a lot of truth to this, you don't want to get involved in a battle over tax credits because the only direction is down. And for the every time the state writes a check for a film tax credit, it lowers the amount of money that we have available to do other critical things. So as the economy was going down, film tax credits were going up in other states. There was less money in the state budget, but at the same time we were losing jobs. It was a really bad situation. The 2014 reforms, which my office was deeply involved in crafting, invested $330 million in tax credits, far beyond what had been done before. In the latest allocation, this is the good news, this is within the last year, 11 productions were approved here in California. These 11 productions are starting to restore very important middle-class jobs, bringing people back from out of state who in some cases had moved, but in many cases were taken away from their families for long periods of time while films were being filmed elsewhere. The return on investment for California is multifaceted. I can't say enough about how important this program is and how it is beginning to restore the film business to California. You can really see that here in our communities. You can see when you drive through Hollywood how the studios are back and really doing business. Another program that we implemented was aerospace tax credits. For those of you who grew up as I did in Southern California and in a family as I did that was tied to the aerospace industry. My dad was an aeronautical engineer. He managed a company in a little town next to Pasadena called Sierra Madre. Nicole here, my nephew, knew my father very, very well, and he was a very well-respected member of the aerospace industry at a time when it was bedrock Southern California industry. Well, over the decades, companies started to move out of state, and again, it became very important for us to reestablish our prominence in aerospace. And so we did implement a tax credit program to bring those businesses back, and that is functioning, and we hope that that's going to, over the years, help restore that business community to Southern California. A couple of other bills that I was involved in, one in particular, let me talk about, is cultural arts districts. This is a program that's just getting underway. There's work being done on it now, but it's a very simple concept. It allows cities or communities or neighborhoods to identify them as California themselves, as California cultural arts districts. This is a competitive process. It will require you to actually, these communities to actually have something substantive to offer, but you will be able to, if you qualify for this program, identify yourself as a cultural arts district, share in the branding for those districts, and the objective here is to raise up what we already know is an important part of the Southern California community with film tax, with the film business, with emerging digital businesses becoming so much a part of our local economy. This program is going to help communities highlight those cultural arts aspects that they have, that they want to show off to the rest of the world and identify themselves, and that should be very important economically for us going forward. That was my legislation that got that started, and so I'm very hopeful that that is going to be successful. I know it's going to be successful in the future. Well, as was mentioned, we did pass the state budget back in June. The 2016-17 budget reflects California's priorities, and it is a work, as all of the budgets under Governor Jerry Brown, a work in fiscal prudence. I don't think that the state legislature wants to do anything other than become fiscally prudent in the state of California, but the governor, working together with the legislature, has really made that a reality. And so we've seen year after year, coming out of the recession, where we've been able to implement, as opposed to the years where the recession was happening and under the former administration, the budgets were a pitched battle. Since Governor Brown has been in office, each budget year has been a negotiation, sometimes a tense negotiation, but every budget has been delivered within our means. It has been delivered on time. Prior budgets had taken months to negotiate after the June deadline, which was really not healthy for the state. We are now building a reserve. We're building a rainy day fund so that when that next recession, which we know will happen, when the next recession happens, we'll be prepared for it. We'll be able to draw down from the rainy day fund and hopefully smooth things out so that we don't have to take as deep a dive as we did in the last recession, in the Great Recession. A few of the highlights in the budget. We repealed the maximum family grant. The maximum family grant said that there was a maximum amount of money that you could receive if you were poor, no matter how big your family was. This is an important change because it really, I think, reflects the predominant thinking today about how we should treat those who are disadvantaged in our cities. This is a way of treating them with respect and allows for people, it provides an opportunity for people to get back on their feet. We increased child care and preschool funding by more than $530 million. This is very important. We understand the importance of early childhood education, and although we haven't gone far enough, each year we've added money to that pot so that we can educate more and more of our children in early childhood education programs. We funded $100 million over 3 years for the primary care residency program. We have a shortage of doctors in the state of California, particularly at the primary doctor level. Family practitioners are in short supply. Nicole's other uncle, is a family practitioner up in Ventura, and there are very, very few doctors at that primary care level, particularly in our poorer communities in places like the Central Valley. So we need to provide more residency programs to bring more doctors into the fold and make sure that they're going to work in the places where they're most needed. The University of California and our community college and state college system saw significant budget cuts. We have, over time, been restoring those cuts. One place where it's been very controversial is the University of California, where the university, and I think it was not inappropriate for the university to do this, but has led to a situation where more and more out-of-state students were being enrolled in the UC system, and we want to have the UC reemphasize California students. We want to make sure that every California student that qualifies for what is one of the most it's the most well-respected public university system in the world, not just here in the country, but in the world. We want to make sure that California, individuals in California have the opportunity, if they qualify, to attend the University of California. So our funding this year and last is tied to increasing enrollment of in-state students, and that's a very, very important development at the University of California. We've also included this year $200 million in one-time Prop 98 funds for college readiness programs at our K through 12 schools. And speaking of K through 12, we have restored billions of dollars of funding to the K through 12 system over the past several years. One of the things that I do in my budget subcommittee in overseeing our departments that are relevant to transportation system and also our natural resources departments is oversee the budget for cap and trade. That has been a very contentious area of our budget. Over the past 2 years, there have been about $4 billion in funds that have been allocated. I'm pleased to say that we were able to reach an agreement with the Senate and with the governor to distribute about $1.4 billion of those funds over the coming year or two. And that's a very, very important development. Also, I think it's important to note that within the budget and within my job as chair of Budget Sub 3, I oversee some of the largest and most important departments in the state of California. These include the Natural Resources Agency, they include the Caltrans, the Department of Motor Vehicles, the breadth of what you would think that if you build within the zoning, that you would have a relatively clear path to actually being able to build a project. Instead, what we've seen as a result of a multiplicity of factors that I won't get into in detail here is that the process becomes a barrier to building as opposed to a way of approving projects with appropriate oversight. And so the Ministerial Acts bill was intended to reform that process and to say, not as a matter of necessity, but if you comply with a community zoning ordinance, you're going to have a clearer path to getting a project approved. You know, it's taking some projects, particularly larger projects, from 6 to 8 years in many cases to get approved. are looking at the marketplace, that's the place where they can make a profit. To take a risk on projects where developers are going to make less money are far less attractive to them. And so in a free market system, the other kinds of housing that we really want to see being built are simply not being built in many cases. Well, the governor saw value in this bill, and instead of letting it pass through the normal legislative process, he took it out of that process and he put it into the budget. That has some benefits to it, but at the end of the day, he also changed the nature of the bill and added some features to it that made it more difficult to pass. It led to a lot of conflict with the environmental community, with labor, and created some problems for the building industry too. It became, there was a good deal of conflict over it, and at the end of the day, it dropped out of the budget process. And we're planning on learning from the experience that we had this year and bringing that bill next year in an improved version. We now know what the pitfalls are, and we're going to bring that back next year and try to get it passed in the next cycle. I want to just, I think you want to leave some time for Q&A, but I did want to touch on another bill, AB 2844, which is a bill very near and dear to my heart, many people in our community. The boycott, divestment, and sanction movement around the world has taken hold. It's very present on California's college campuses. This is, for those of you who may not know about it, is a movement to ask that people boycott, to divest from, companies divest from, and that governments sanction the state of Israel. The ultimate goal of the BDS movement, as stated by many of its leaders, is not to create two states in the Middle East, but to create one state that would be a Palestinian state, and to eliminate what we know as the state of Israel. Because this is such an important issue here in the state of California, because I represent the largest Jewish community in the state of California, the Legislative Jewish Caucus, which was formed just a couple of years ago, in part to try and deal with the issue of BDS on our college campuses, took it upon ourselves to bring forward what was a very difficult and controversial bill, AB 2844, which, put simply, now says that if a company engages in a agrees to engage in a discriminatory boycott of the state of Israel, refuses to do business with the state of Israel, then there will be consequences from that. So I'm very pleased to announce that just last week that bill passed in the state legislature. It is now sitting on the governor's desk. We're very hopeful that the governor will sign it, but the governor does need to hear from as many people as possible. So if you're so inclined, I'd ask for you to contact the governor's office and let him know of your support for AB 2844. And with that,
Great.
I will
Thank you. So we have a few minutes for questions. Philip, you had your hand up first.
Hi, been trying for years now to get an elected official to deal with the handicap parking that's going on, especially in the west side. In the village, about 47% of our spaces are taken up with people's fake permits, or permits that they don't really deserve. And they just stay there all day. It hurts the businesses, it hurts the community, it hurts the tax base for Los Angeles and all of California. But no one's been willing to take it on. What is your take on that?
I've had conversations with many people, and I know, let me introduce Josh Kirkes from my district director, who's in charge of my local staff. Josh hears about this issue all the time. I have heard about it from many constituents. I did begin a conversation with last year with individuals in the disabilities community. They recognize it as an issue because it hurts them when the system is abused. The problem is, how do you address it in an effective way that does not affect the rights of people who need to have that access? And that's a very, very difficult conversation, and one which I frankly don't know the answer to. I'm happy to continue to have the conversation. I think that you would find many receptive, I know you'll find many receptive individuals in Sacramento who would be willing to help champion that cause. But it's a very, very sensitive topic, and one that we have to handle right.
We haven't found anyone who would like to champion it for us. It's very frustrating.
Well, I understand that. I'm happy to, I don't think you and I have had that conversation yet. I'd be happy to have it with you. Nobody has given me the formula, the bill language, the suggestion for, we know what the problem is, but defining a solution that is an acceptable solution is very, very complex and difficult. So again, please, if you'd like to share your information with Josh, happy to have the conversation.
Thank you. Gary, you're next.
Curious, has the legalization of medical marijuana been a financial boon to the state, a benefit? Also, has there been an increase in crime associated with it?
Did everyone hear the question? Has the legalization of medical marijuana been an economic boon to the state, and has there also been an increase in or decrease in crime? What's the crime results?
Well, it's largely an underground economy, as you know, so it's hard to really assess whether economically it's a boon. It certainly is not a revenue boon to the state of California because it's not taxed. So there's certainly some, obviously it's an economy, so there is some benefit. There are people working in that economy who are productive members. But there's also a very, very significant impact on the state of California. And this is not simply because medical marijuana is legally allowed, it's because there is a substantial illegal trade and illegal cultivation, both legal and illegal cultivation of marijuana throughout the state of California. The environmental toll and the enforcement costs are very, very significant for the state right now. It's one of the reasons that I think that it's not unlikely that California voters will choose in November to implement a system not unlike that in Colorado. There certainly are many issues that we need to consider when it comes to the use of marijuana. But I think the time has come that we're going to be seeing some reform, further reform of those laws. It deeply troubles me that I understand the benefits of the medicinal use of marijuana for many people who are ill, but the system that we have now is, I don't know how any other way to put it, is a joke. And everybody knows that. It doesn't take much to get a prescription today for the use of medicinal marijuana. I think that we have been sending a message to the young people of the state of California for decades now, because the system's been in place for a long time, that our laws really don't mean much. That it's almost something that happens with a wink, and I think that's the wrong message to send to the youth of our state. I think it would be far better to simply acknowledge that this is something that we can regulate more effectively than allow the way we have in the past.
Assemblymember, that's our time. Thank you again so much for taking the time and especially talking about the three bills that you referred to as well as the Israel bill. We appreciate hearing kind of what's going on and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And if you want to have more information from Assemblyman Bloom or would like to get in touch with his office, please do see Josh. Josh, stand up again so everyone can see you. Hopefully Josh has a lot of business cards because I know some folks may have some issues that they would like to bring up. And but here's the thing: if you bring up an issue, bring up a solution. Don't just come up to Josh or the Assemblyman and complain. Hey, what are you going to do about this? Provide a solution, and I think that's the way things will really get done. And correct me if I'm wrong. Here in the state, is people come up with creative solutions, not just vociferous complaints. So.
That's okay, we need to hear the complaints too.
Complaints are okay, but do try to bring a solution. So that brings us to the end of our meeting today. I like to end our meetings with a quote. There will be a little time afterwards if you want to speak to Josh or Mr. Bloom, if you are available for folks to maybe take selfies or to complain or hopefully provide a solution. There will be time for that as well. But my name is Buzz Park. I'm with Light Your Marketing Group. It has been my pleasure to be your MC today, and we specialize in helping businesses find, get, and keep customers through search engine marketing, website development, and email marketing. So if you have any questions about that type of thing, please feel free to give me a call or come up and talk to me. So today's quote is from motivational speaker and author Jim Rohn. If you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into somebody else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. So everybody go out there, fulfill your plan, make a difference in Los Angeles, and we will see you at the next chamber event. Thank you.